Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed.
Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Good morning. You're looking at a live view of Falcon Heavy on historic launch pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, awaiting liftoff at 9:41 a.m. Eastern Time. Welcome to our live webcast of the USSF 44 mission from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Kate Tice, and I'm the Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX. And I'm excited to be here with you this morning, bringing you coverage of our first Falcon Heavy launch since 2019. Today's mission is a national security space launch for the United States Space Force and marks our fourth Falcon Heavy mission of all time and our 50th overall launch of 2022. When we first flew Falcon Heavy over 4 years ago, we sent Starman on a journey to space in a Tesla Roadster. After that demonstration mission in 2018, we launched 2 operational missions the following year with the Arabsat 6A and STP-2 payloads. Today's mission will be SpaceX's 3rd overall operational Falcon Heavy mission and our 2nd launching a U.S. government satellite, first being STP-2. USSF 44 will launch into a geosynchronous Earth orbit from Launch Complex 39A in Florida, which, as you can kind of see there through the fog on your screen. At our customer's request, we will not be showing views of the payload, so we'll be ending our webcast just after our Falcon 9 side boosters make their way back to land on LZ1 and LZ2, a little past the T+8 minute mark into flight. Now, as I mentioned before, it is a little foggy there at pad 39A. However, we promise that everything is still go for liftoff on time. The range and everything is still looking green. Everything's still looking good with our countdown as we approach the T-13 minute mark. We have a 90% chance, 90% favorability in terms of our weather conditions, so even though it is a little foggy, we're still good to go. Now, if for some reason we don't get to launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 9:37 a.m. Eastern Time. So we're now just under T-13 minutes and counting. Let's take a closer look at the Falcon Heavy vehicle that will deliver the USSF 44 payload to its intended orbit. Falcon Heavy is essentially 3 Falcon 9 rockets strapped together, meaning it can carry much larger payloads not only to Earth orbit, but to the Moon and Mars as well. Like the Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy is a 2-stage launch vehicle. The big difference is that the Falcon Heavy first stage is comprised of 3 cores, and Falcon 9 only has 1. Falcon Heavy has 28 engines, making it the world's most powerful
internal power.
their call out indicating that the spacecraft is now on internal power. So with the 28 engines, this makes Falcon Heavy the world's most powerful operational rocket by a factor of 2. Each of these cores has 9 M1D engines, making for a total of 27 engines across all 3 boosters, as you see there in that shot. The 28th engine is a Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, and that's what will power the payload to its final targeted orbit. Altogether, the Merlin 1D engines at the base of Falcon Heavy produce 5 million pounds of thrust, equal to 18 747s at takeoff. In fact, the engines produce so much power that we don't even run them at full thrust all at once. We do that after liftoff. Now, after liftoff, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, those 2 side boosters will separate from the center core and come back to Earth for simultaneous landings at Landing Zone 1 and Landing Zone 2, which we have a beautiful view there on your screen. If successfully recovered, the side boosters will be refurbished and used in a future national security space launch. Upon side booster separation, the center core will keep firing for about 90 seconds before shutting down its engines, then perform a standard stage separation from the second stage. We will not be attempting to land our center core today, as the mission requires more performance, meaning in order to get our payload where it needs to go for today's mission, the center core will burn the fuel that we would typically use for recovery. For those of you looking closely, even though it is a little foggy, that's why you don't see any landing legs or grid fins on the center core. You'll probably get a better view of that after liftoff. Now, moving up to the second stage, once the first stage and second stage separate, it will propel our payload to its intended orbit. At our customer's request, we will not be showing views of stage 2, so immediately after the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage fires up, we'll be directing all of our attention to the landing of our side boosters. Now, above the second stage is where our payload is safely enclosed inside the fairing. The fairing protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing as the second stage continues its journey to orbit. We will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today with our recovery vessel, Doug. As I mentioned earlier, today's launch is USSF 44, and that's for the national security. It's a national security space launch mission for the United States Space Force. Now let's learn a little bit more from our customer about the mission at hand.
We depend on space every day to support our way of life, our supply chain, financial systems, weather tracking, and power grids, as well as air, land, and maritime infrastructure. Our U.S. military is the strongest and best equipped force in the world. In the heavily contested space domain, Space Systems Command leads a team of roughly 15,000 guardians, airmen, civilians, and contractors. Headquartered in El Segundo, California, our unbeatable team operates from multiple locations across the U.S. and includes 2 space launch deltas, SLD-45 at Patrick Space Force Base and SLD-30 at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Through unity of effort across the space acquisition enterprise, Space Systems Command delivers to warfighters integrated and resilient space capabilities through 5 program executive offices. Assured access to space, procures launch services and delivers on-orbit capabilities faster and more frequently than ever before, while sustaining ranges for the United States Space Force and commercial partners. Battle Management Command, Control, and Communication delivers tactical and operational command and control capabilities to warfighters, facilitating timely and quality battle space decisions for the joint all-domain fight. Space domain awareness and combat power maximizes the full characterization of space using a wide range of multi-domain assets by rapidly detecting potential and real threats to our nation and allies, which enables decisive action in the space domain. Communications and positioning, navigation, and timing ensures the delivery of resilient capabilities across the acquisition lifecycle, from prototypes to systems on the production line to systems our warfighters have been operating for years. Space sensing delivers space-based battle space awareness through missile warning, tracking, environmental monitoring, and tactical intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Our adversaries fully intend to disrupt, degrade, and destroy the U.S. and our allies' ability to access and operate in space. Not on our watch. Space Systems Command is focused on creating and sustaining resilient lethality in space through systems integration, unity of effort, and digital engineering ecosystems. At Space Systems Command, space starts here.
We're now at almost T-minus 6 minutes and 30 seconds, and the SpaceX team continues to count down for launch of our third operational Falcon Heavy flight, and all systems remain go. At this point in time, fuel load is complete on the second stage as well as one of the side boosters. And there we just heard the call out that the fuel load is now complete on the other side booster as well as the center core. Now, following a successful static fire last Thursday, Falcon Heavy rolled out to the pad with a payload yesterday and went vertical about 6 hours later. You can see a time lapse of that there on your screen. Before we began the webcast today, the SpaceX launch director pulled the members of the launch team and got a go for prop loading and launch, which, as I just mentioned, we're currently undergoing. We're loading propellant on all three first stage boosters and the second stage. Now, you may be able to hear the live rocket sounds from our launch pad. The pops and hissings that you hear are from the propellant loading as well as the launch mount and strong back that the propellant is flowing through. Falcon Heavy uses two propellants, a refined form of kerosene called RP1 or Rocket Propellant 1, and that's the fuel, and LOX or liquid oxygen for the oxidizer. An oxidizer is a type of chemical that a fuel requires in order to burn. The liquid oxygen is chilled below its boiling point so that it has a much greater amount of mass per volume. Basically, we can load more of it into the rocket. Our fuel is RP1, essentially a purified kerosene. It is safe, easily available, and has a lot of history. As a fun fact, the Saturn V first stage flown from this very pad for moon missions also used liquid oxygen and kerosene.
Falcon Heavy tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
And then we just heard the call out. We are preparing for that strong back retraction. Now, in addition to the two propellants I mentioned, we also use the chemical TETRA, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, as an ignition source. The combustion of RP1 and LOX is what makes the rocket go up, and it's the TETRA that basically sets the match for that propellant mix.
Strong back lower has begun.
And we can see there on your screen shortly that we will begin to see that strong back begin to retract away from the fairing. In preparation for that retraction, the clamp arms around the second stage opened, and that allows the strong back to recline away from the vehicle. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is our first Falcon Heavy flight in 3 years, and a lot will happen in the first 4 minutes of flight. First, we will light the two side boosters, followed by the center core. Then, about 40 seconds after liftoff, we will decrease power on the two side boosters in preparation for max Q, after which Falcon Heavy will then throttle back.
NY LOX load is complete.
So there we heard the call out that one of these side boosters is now complete with its LOX load, fully loaded with all of its propellants. Then it looks like we can see that strong back retraction happening now.
PY LOX load is complete.
We are now fully loaded with LOX on the other side booster. So 2 minutes into flight, we will again reduce thrust on the two side boosters, this time to decrease forces on the rocket structure overall. The vehicle at that point in time will be much lighter, but the thrust remains constant. At 2.5 minutes into flight, we fully turn off the side boosters with the booster engine cutoff, or BECO. This pneumatic
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And there we heard the call out, stage 1 LOX load is complete. So at this point in time, both side boosters and the center core are now fully loaded with its liquid oxygen and RP1. Once clear of the side boosters, the center core will throttle up to full power and until the center core shuts down with main engine cutoff, or MECO, and then separate from the second stage around the 4-minute mark. From that point on, very similar to Falcon 9 mission, side boosters will be making their way back to Earth for recovery. The fairing will separate, and the second stage will take the USSF 44 payload out into space. Just as a quick reminder, at the request of our customer, we won't be showing views of the payload, so we'll be ending the webcast just after our side boosters make their way back to land at LZ1 and LZ2, and that will be a little after the T+8 minute mark into flight.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
So there we heard the call out, stage 2 LOX load is complete. So at this point in time, Falcon Heavy is now fully loaded with all of its propellants. As I've mentioned before in previous webcasts, launch is hard. Falcon Heavy is no exception. We're essentially counting down 3 rockets simultaneously. So our team is going to be conservative in case anything pops up in the last minutes of the countdown. In addition to the fog around the launch pad, we can see some of the white clouds there around the vehicle. Totally normal. That's just the liquid oxygen, basically
ground gas closeouts.
Vaporizing as it comes into contact with the ambient air. Now that those closeouts are complete, as we just heard that call out, we should see more of that. Next, we'll hear the call out that Falcon 9 is in startup.
Falcon Heavy is in startup.
All right, at this point in time, Falcon Heavy's onboard flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. Great view of the base of Falcon Heavy there.
MD, LD, go for launch.
LD, this is the MD. The MD is go for launch.
And there we heard the final go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds and counting.
Let's listen in to the final count as Falcon Heavy gets ready to go to space once again.
T-minus 15 seconds and counting. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, liftoff. Vehicle is pitching downrange. In with the chamber pressure is nominal. Nominal power and telemetry.
Pounds of thrust. Headed to space. We've throttled down in preparation for max Q, moment of peak mechanical stress on the rocket.
Falcon Heavy is supersonic.
There we just heard the call out that the vehicle is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. What a beautiful sight.
Max Q.
All right, there we just heard the call out. That is the moment of peak mechanical stress on the rocket. M1D engines throttling back up. A beautiful sight to see Falcon Heavy flying once again. Now, shortly we'll hear the call out for MVAC chill, indicating that the second stage is prepping the MVAC engine.
Vehicle is following a nominal trajectory.
We will flow a little bit of the super chilled liquid oxygen through the turbo pumps on that MVAC in preparation for the full flow of the super chilled propellant. Shots there of each side booster on the right-hand side of your screen. Next event will be booster engine cutoff, or BECO. That'll be followed by stage separation of side boosters, side booster boost back burn, center core main engine cutoff. We are about 10 seconds away from the booster separation.
Side core shutdown. Booster separation confirmed.
There you can see and heard it by the incredible excitement within the crowd behind me. Successful separation of the side boosters. There we can see 3 engines on each side booster have relit for their boost back burn. At this point in time, both side boosters are returning.
All vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Good news there, both side boosters and the center core, everything looking good. Side boosters are returning to the coast of Florida, now under the power of 3 engines. That's a view there of the center core. Coming up, 3 events happening in rapid succession. We'll have the conclusion of the side booster boost back burn, followed by main engine cutoff, as well as stage separation of that center core. As a reminder, per request of our customer, we won't be showing second stage views after second engine start 1. Additionally, our center core, or stage 1, the one you see there, is expendable today, so we are not recovering this booster.
Boost back burn shutdown. Nico. Stage separation confirmed.
There you heard the call out and saw on your screen we had side boost back burn conclusion, as well as the main engine cutoff and separation for that center core, and we heard call out of second engine start 1. At this point in time, with that call out,
Separation confirmed.
We will wrap our coverage pertaining to the second stage, keeping our focus on the side boosters.
Continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Which you see there, unfortunately, looks like
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
the cameras on those side boosters are a little fogged over. We heard confirmation of successful fairing separation. While second stage continues on its journey, the fairing halves will fall back to Earth, where we will attempt to recover them using our recovery vessel, Doug. As a reminder, today we'll be attempting to recover the 2 Falcon Heavy side boosters on land. You can sort of make out some cloud coverage there in the background camera. We'll bring that back to you whenever we're able. Now, in just a few minutes, the side boosters will execute an entry burn followed by a landing burn. Both burns are meant to slow the side boosters down rapidly before landing. At the time of separation, the side boosters were traveling slow enough to turn around and make their way back to land at our side-by-side landing pads. If we have successful landings today, it will mark the 150th and 151st successful landing of an orbital class rocket. As I mentioned earlier, center core is going to be expended, and we are not attempting to recover it. This allows us to utilize...
All vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Allows us to utilize all the propellant on board and deliver peak performance for the payload delivery. On the left-hand side of your screen is a live view of Hawthorne Mission Control here at SpaceX headquarters. We're about 30 seconds away from the entry burn for the 2 side boosters. There on the top and bottom of the right-hand side of your screen. Standing by for side booster entry burn.
Booster entry burns have started.
There we heard the call out that the booster entry burn has begun.
Booster entry burn shutdown.
Looks like the ice on those cameras are now clearing.
EY and NY FTS have safed. All vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
So that re-entry burn has concluded. We're expecting the landing burn to begin in about 30 seconds. The entry burn intended to slow the vehicles down significantly as they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. amazing tracking cam views of the boosters as they return to landing zone 1 and 2. We can see the grid fins there.
Both side boosters transonic.
Stage 2 FTS is saved. Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
We can see those grid fins steering the boosters for a precise landing. Again, we're attempting
Booster
landing. Landing zone 1 and 2. There we just heard sonic booms. And there you have it. As indicated by the enormous cheers, we have successfully landed both Falcon Heavy side boosters at landing zone 1 and landing zone 2. What an incredible sight.
Nominal parking orbit.
With these two side boosters, this marks the 150th and 151st overall successful landing of an orbital class rocket. This is the 21st landing at landing zone 1 and the 4th landing at landing zone 2. And with successful confirmation of our side boosters landing, that will bring today's webcast to a close. We'd like to thank the United States Space Force for entrusting us with today's mission. Thank you to the Range and FAA for licensing today's launch. And we'd like to thank all of our viewers for tuning in for an exciting morning. Now, if you're interested, head over to our website and social media platforms for updates on our next missions and milestones. Hope to see you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.